Hello, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Fabian, the group product manager for Enablement. And
I'm Nick, engineering manager for Geo, also filling in for, I guess, a few months perhaps as acting product manager.
yeah, you're doing it all and you're doing amazingly well. So we're here to talk about how we work with each other as a product manager and an engineering manager who also is working a little bit as a product manager. So it's going to be a little bit all over the place. If you're interested in learning how to use a more sort of Kanban style of working, we have another video on our process, our planning process, how we use our Kanban board. We also use planning issues similar to what many other groups are doing and epics. So we are not going to focus too much on the procedural aspects of this, even though that's very important, and adhering to it is important because otherwise it's going to make everything more confusing, but we have some content for you already. So I think there are a couple of interesting things to talk about because I think this came up as a question regarding how do we prioritize feature work against tech debt and things that are maybe sort of a little bit more sort of closer to the engineering organization, and how do we make that work, and how do we make these calls together? Because it is, I think, often thought of that sometimes engineering and product management has a bit of tension. I think that is not wrong, and I think that's normal. So it becomes a question of like, how do we manage that? And I think that's what we're going to talk about. So Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's often viewed as there being some tension between product and engineering, and I think ideally it's a healthy tension where product is the DRI for, I often hear it as product is the what and engineering is the how. And I think that's true to some extent, but I don't think we should, it should always be that clear cut. And I don't think it's healthy when you try to make that clear of a distinction between the responsibilities. Like, I think in terms of talking about DRI, directly responsible individuals, like, yes, I think product should be the DRI there. Engineering is the DRI when it comes to how, but I think ultimately both functions are working towards the same goals of improving the product and delivering value to our customers, and therefore both functions should have empathy for what the other is doing. And I think if I were to boil it down to one word to summarize how an effective EM/PM or product engineering collaboration should look like, it would be empathy.
I think it's a really good point, and I think what we've worked on over the last couple of years, really, as a team, is to build these relationships and that empathy. I like how you phrased it, that we are all trying to do the same thing at the end of the day, which is to make our customers successful and to provide value. So even though we have different individual functions that are directly responsible for specific aspects of that, I think in a way we can think of for example, the Geo team as the directly responsible team for the success of our customers who use our product for disaster recovery or worldwide performance issues. And therefore, many sort of parts of this bring different perspectives to that task, but ultimately, I think we have the same goal. And I think then, as you described, the main thing that helps, I think, prioritize is to have the empathy to understand why are people suggesting this. And sometimes, as a product manager, for example, I I struggle to see the technical context. I'm, somebody like a software engineer, proposes to work on a specific item of technical debt, and I have these grand plans for a new feature that is really important and produces value, and it's not hard for me to understand, or it's hard for me to understand why somebody would even care about it. It's clearly not very exciting. But when we allow opportunities to ask questions and learn about that perspective, sometimes what happens is you start to see, okay, so this is really an area of the product, the code that is super hard to work with. It makes everything slower, right? We have a lot of technical debt, there are tons of issues, things are brittle. And then when you gain this understanding, it makes it all of a sudden maybe like a lot more valuable to address in the short term or in the long term. And I think if you're not in a position where you are interested in those perspectives, then it becomes a fight. It's like, why are we not looking at these bugs? Why are we not doing this faster? I think a lot of that has to do with not focusing on understanding each other and spending that time.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to view the team's work and the product group's work holistically. And so I think there's a subtle mindset shift to be made in changing this thinking around our priorities and their priorities, or my priorities and their priorities to our priorities. So even recently in some discussion about this, it may have been a survey question. I think it was something along the lines of like, do you think that your priorities are often get consideration, or your work gets prioritized? And to me, I felt like that was just sort of the wrong question to be asking in general, and indicative of this sort of false adversarial tension that we often ascribe to the EM-PM relationship. Like, it should really be the team's priorities. Yes, each role plays a different part in shaping what the team works on and how the product improves, but at the end of the day, we're all moving towards the same goals. And so if engineering raises some concerns about performance and how that might affect the product, I think the product manager should take that seriously and consider that as part of improving the feature and the product, and not as this other thing you have to do that detracts from delivering on your roadmap. I mean, it is part of the roadmap, just the same as trying to improve the usability of something or improve a feature might be the thing to prioritize over this refactoring that, yes, would have some improvements, but maybe could be delayed a little bit longer because there could be a bigger immediate impact from delivering on this improvement. And I think it just has to be this open dialogue where there is shared understanding and empathy to ultimately come to some sort of prioritization of these different factors.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that doesn't mean that we have to make every single decision in harmony and consensus. Sometimes it's the case that there's a very clear case for doing something now and something else later, and we have the DRI system to allow us to move forward. But I think that happens pretty rarely, because I think if everybody has a shared understanding of what's going on, then it's I think that goes a very long way, actually. And I think that does not mean that I, as a product manager, get to decide how something is to be implemented, right? I think those are still things where I trust the engineering organization to do their best and deliver that work just as much as I trust our designer to make the right design decisions. And I think that also helps to, develop this this trust that, people act with good intentions to, do the right thing for our customers. And I think that's really important. And then, sorry, the other thing I wanted to say, which is something that you're doing, which I think is super amazing, is we have a RISE framework for prioritizing work, for example. We use it mainly for longer term initiatives. And, I've used that for myself in the past as a PM, because you're looking at, reach, impact, confidence, and effort. And it's useful in that way, but we've opened that up now in an asynchronous way to the entire team. And we're trying to take in the assessments from everyone. And we've had a team member raise a new epic that they believe is going to be valuable, that is tech debt. And I think see why they think that is the key, to allow the space to actually express those opinions without sort of repercussion in a negative way. I think that's really important. And I think we've had a number of instances in Geo where that actually has led to some very significant positive outcomes for our customers.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think it also goes to highlight in that specific example, it's tech debt, but it's also potentially simplifying the installation of Geo if we can get rid of this tech debt. And I think often sometimes it can be viewed like, well, tech debt, is it really this, should it really take priority? It could probably wait a little longer. But I think if we take the longer term view on things and consider tech debt type of work in that context, it often does translate to a business case, right? Like improving these queries now potentially saves us a lot of trouble down the line and makes the product a lot better in the long run, even if you could have put it off for a couple more months. So I think also just prioritizing with the long-term view in mind is really important, because I think if we're only taking a look at the short-term view and maybe what customers may be expecting in the next couple of releases, I mean, sometimes that stuff's important to deliver on, but if we're always only looking a release or two ahead and not really thinking about what's going to benefit the product in the long run, I think we may be less likely to try to prioritize things that may be viewed as tech debt or less urgent.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think the Geo self-service framework is an example where we started prioritizing some sort of very foundational bits of work in Geo, because we, as a team, I think also were of the belief that in the medium to long term, we would be able to serve our customers better, and we would accelerate overall and increase velocity. And that was balanced with delivery along the way of things and features. But sure, it prioritized maybe some things that you could traditionally think of as tech debt or with that lens, but I think that's rarely true. And so I think if you sort of my approach to this, and I think that we've talked about that actually quite a bit recently, is if you look at the value that you're providing, then there's more than one possible dimension, and the prioritization of what you're trying to do as a team should look at those dimensions not as sort of things that cancel each other out or that have to compete, but sort of even a little bit dispassionately and say like, okay, what can we do where we believe this is going to be most valuable, and then there's more than one way of doing it. And I think that helps us to prioritize. And they're great frameworks, like the RISE framework, to help with that decision and formalize that if necessary. And I think just to sort of go full circle to the beginning, and then speaking about this empathy bit, I think something that I've always really, really enjoyed, and I think that's super important, is to encourage engineers to join customer calls. Not only the emergency please fix something calls, but the people talk about the pain points they have, the things that they would like to see improved, the bits that are maybe not the way they are, or the the praise where they say like, hey, this has really helped us tremendously. I think it's important that that every team member feels able to participate in that. And vice versa, that's maybe also true, right? And I need to sometimes spend some time with engineering.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, both of those are very nice examples of tactical things that people can consider trying to strengthen that relationship. Yeah, I've appreciated sitting in on those calls and gaining an appreciation for the job that product, not only product, but also the sales organization does in communicating the value of GitLab to our customers and trying to understand what they're trying to accomplish. And I think on the flip side of that, I've appreciated you as a product manager trying to understand the technical aspects of the product a little better. And it's not that you're getting like super deep into the code or anything, but you are. I think I've noticed that you've tried to understand what's happening in Geo at a deeper level than you maybe need to, but it really helps that you put in that effort. And then when you are then talking through some of these tech debt type of issues that are being raised by the engineering team, I think you have a better appreciation for what's being communicated and how that ties to value, ties to customer value. So I think it definitely goes both ways. And the other example I will point to that's kind of tactical and that I think people could try out is that you also have done a nice job of, in our weekly calls, having this, we mentioned that we walk the board and we have a video about how we do that, about how we go through our Kanban board every week, but at the end we turn off the recording and then you give a quick 10-minute debrief on the most notable customer and support things happening that week or over the, or what happened the week before and maybe what's upcoming. And so everybody on the team gets a sense of, yeah, just what are some of the things that our customers are facing, what are some items that might need our attention if support escalates them. And I think it just further strengthens that relationship between the engineering team and product.
Yeah, I agree with that. And thanks for highlighting that. I think this is another good example. Yeah, I think ultimately, as you said, it's about the empathy. But all of these things are also really like rooted in GitLab's values to get that out there. I think that is true, right? If we are focusing on results and collaboration and efficiency and those things, then I think prioritization comes a lot more naturally. And I think that is, I think if you really spend the time to build these relationships across the team, not only with PM and EM, but also support and professional services. You mentioned you had a great call with a professional services engineer who was able to contribute a lot to, their explaining sort of their experience building a complex deployment, and those things matter. And I think that is really, really important. And so investing the time in those relationships ultimately will help us get better prioritization. And so that's by building empathy. And then use Kanban or whatever else works. They're tools, I think that's the other thing.
But I do think, yeah, it's, yeah, you can try to think of the best processes to make your prioritization and collaboration really efficient. But if you don't sort of have that baseline level of empathy building and trust with your counterparts, I don't think you're going to get as much out of those types of tools like our Kanban board and weekly scheduling process.
Yeah, I agree. Super. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up. I think that's I agree with all of that, and I feel very fortunate to work with a great team, and the wider Geo team and all of the folks who help us do the best we can. And so, yeah. Anything else from your end?
No, I agree with everything you said. I enjoyed our collaboration, and I'm glad we got a chance to talk about it here.
Yeah, hopefully it's helpful. Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.